Hello, podcast listeners, and thank you for tuning in to Extracting Wisdom. I think I have a really interesting episode for you today, but before we get into that, I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about the Voices of Dentistry podcast summit that will be taking place on January 24th and 25th in Scottsdale, Arizona at the Hilton Resort and Villas. Guys, this is a meeting I've been dying to go to ever since it started. I remember listening to podcasters talking about this event back in undergrad and how upset I was that I couldn't make it. But now I finally get to go to the 4th annual Voices of Dentistry as a podcaster. So why should you be coming to this event? This year's speaker lineup is going to be absolutely incredible. All of your favorite podcasters will be here too, and that is the biggest part of this event. You will have the chance to network and meet your favorite podcasters and hopefully be on a couple podcasts yourself. And who doesn't want to be in sunny Scottsdale during January? It is going to be an absolute blast. Now, the majority of you who are listening are dental students, and I want to make a point to tell you that there is a student discount. Dentists are going to pay about $1,000 for this event, but students will pay $325. That is almost a 70% discount. Now, $325 may seem like a lot, but what you are going to get out of this event is far more than what you will pay to get here. Hurry and sign up for Voices of Dentistry 2020 at www.voicesofdentistry.com because the block of hotel rooms will go fast. I can't wait to see all of you there. And now, without further ado, enjoy the show.
You are now listening to Extracting Wisdom. Here to help you prevent the decay of your future is your host, Brandon Bevert.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Extracting Wisdom. This is episode number 42, and I would like to start off with a question for all of you. How many times have you gotten into the sim clinic or clinic and realized that you forgot a vital piece of equipment or forgot to perform a vital part of a procedure like etching before bonding in a composite, for example? I'm sure all of us have done something like this every now and then. So what I've been kind of thinking about is how can we minimize these mistakes? Before we get into kind of the main part of this episode, I just want to give you a little bit of backstory. And recently I've really gotten into aviation and started learning about how to fly planes and how to get my private pilot's license. And eventually, because I'm way too busy right now to do that, but it's definitely something I'd like to accomplish in the future. Anyway, one of the biggest parts of aviation are checklists, and pilots use a lot of them. And so why do pilots use so many checklists? What is the importance of them? And how can we apply this mentality to dentistry? So here to explain this all to us is a really, really good buddy of mine. We met all the way back in middle school, but he is now a commercial pilot for American Airlines. Mr. Dalton Thompson, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much, Brandon. Very nice to be here. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the both of us talk.
Of course. I'm happy to have you on tonight. So first things first, Dalton, before we kind of even get into the checklists, tell me and my listeners, because actually I don't even know this full story. Tell us about how you got into aviation and kind of just like the basic road that you took all the way from your very first pilot certificate all the way to becoming a commercial airliner.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brandon had been there in the middle school to high school time, so he saw a little bit of the progression. So that was fun. I'm sure he heard a couple stories here and there, but initially I fell in love with flying because you catch the bug for aviation very early. Way back in 2001, I went down to Florida to Disney World for the first time. And I would just remember being super mesmerized. And we didn't travel that often back in the day, but back in the olden days of aviation where they actually served food, it's like a McDonald's McGriddle type thing. We called it the airplane sandwich for many years. Until I finally went on a couple of other flights, and then it just became more of a thing for me. And I looked forward to the flight more than I did the actual vacation. And I never knew it would be possible to become an airline pilot. But that all changed one day when I was looking in the paper. They had an advertisement for pilots that would volunteer their time for kids from 7 to 17 to actually go out to the airport and fly in these small 2 or 4 seater airplanes. Like Brandon will start flying very soon, hopefully. Hope to take him up one day. We were trying to the other day, but the weather got bad.
I know.
But I went there, and then to feel the control in your hands, because there are two yokes or control sticks in the airplane at one time. And sometimes the pilots that volunteer their time let you, in fact, fly a little bit. So then I just remember feeling super in control and really wanting to find a way to do this. And that was right around 8th grade where the light switched on in my head. I initially wanted to be first a meteorologist and then second of all an architect. And both of them are amazing jobs. But as soon as I realized that you could actually go to college and get a degree in aviation and pursue it in more of a civilian route, that's where I said, okay, this is actually possible. So then I went through and got my private pilot certificate, the initial starting one when I was 17. And then went through training at Southern Illinois University. It's the southern tip of Illinois. It's essentially in the middle of nowhere, but still good flight school nonetheless. It's nice to be back in Chicago, living here now. But yeah, just a 4-year degree. And then I attained enough flights. I need 1,000 hours total time to go to the airlines. And then I just transferred forward through there. And it's been a love ever since, because now you have access to the world and you always have a different view. You know, there's always a different story, just like in dentistry too. There's always something new, something different that you can come home and tell your friends, tell your wife, tell your whoever, some new story of the day.
I'm sure flying planes, though, 40,000 feet in the sky is a little bit more interesting than dentistry at times.
You never know. I've never pulled teeth or did any dentist work. What you've done and what I've seen on your social media and pictures that you sent me is pretty incredible. So I wouldn't sell yourself short or anything short like that.
Thank you. Well, that stuff is cool, but you can't beat aviation. It's awesome. So I can't wait for you to take me up sometime, man. If only the winds weren't as bad as they were that day. We were planning on going up.
Yeah, it's always winds, weather in terms of rain and things like that. We're at a weird time of the season where it's changing, so the wind speeds are very, very drastic, and it's just not a fun ride in a 4-seater plane. I'm sure we would have had a blast, but better safe than sorry.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into these checklists, Dalton.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about just what checklists are, how many of them are there, why they're so important. Let's start right there.
Sure. Well, it's very extensive in terms of when I even began my private pilot training to get it at 17. You were taught by the instructors and whoever was in the aviation world how important checklists were. So, for example, when you start out in a small 4-seater airplane, there's still a lot of things to do. For example, the pre-flight checklist, and that's the most instrumental one because you're going around and checking specific systems and things of that nature to make sure that they're all working, because you can't necessarily fix everything mid-flight. Now, moving forward to the airline industry becomes even more crucial because of the fact that so much more can go wrong. You have a lot more people in the back that you're looking to get them safely to the destination. So on top of just a pre-flight inspection and then typical things, for example, a before start checklist, an after start checklist, before takeoff checklist, a climb checklist, a cruise checklist, a descent checklist, before landing and after landing checklist, and parking checklist. So they have a lot of those because you need to know and to jog your memory about what to do in each configuration of flight. There's something called the type rating to essentially be rated in a particular airframe that's over 12,500 pounds or other specific there. But yeah, so you need that. Overall, though,
so let me ask you this, Dalton. So obviously checklists are super important. We have, you're flying a super complex machine, 40,000 feet in the sky, and, you have a lot of people in the back. So you want to make sure that things are done the same way every single time in a predictable manner. So are there times when you guys will tend to just glance over them, or like, I'm sure working at an airline, sometimes you guys might even just do them from memory. Do you guys always have that checklist in front of you?
So that's what's cool about having a checklist too, because we do it so often. So if something if we're about to push from the gate or something like that, we're ready to read the checklist. And then I have everything memorized because I've done hundreds of flights and you know exactly what's going to happen. So if something, for example, was you were thinking differently that day, or you're just a little bit more tired than normal, you're still going to become more regimented. It becomes more of a muscle memory. So everything's taken care of. And this can be brought back way back to the 30s, the 1930s, when they didn't necessarily have checklists, but planes became more and more complex. And there was a very bad accident that happened. And Boeing specifically, with their airframe, they took a look as to why this happened, and all they had to do was have some type of thing that was set up on the flight deck so they would have their memory jog so they could take care of a particular procedure at that moment in time. So then moving forward to today, we just read these things and they're always out. They're right underneath, next to my iPad, actually. And back in the day, they had more paper plates and charts like that. But today they just have one iPad. But we just have the checklist that's still paper right next to us. There's some other things I forgot to touch on too, in terms of the importance of checklist usage, because with system failures and things like that, so many things could potentially go wrong. Our maintenance team at American's amazing, but they can't predict everything that could happen mid-flight, because you're taking a metal airframe to an environment that's very hostile. Up there, it's -50, -60 degrees all the time, with wind speeds from the jet stream of up to 100 to 200 miles per hour. And no one specifically knows how aviation works. That's actually a fun fact. There are many theories, but there's no specific actual fact that this is how it works. So many emergencies can happen mid-flight, and I've experienced a few. Then if something like that happens, it pops up on the screen that we have a specific checklist. American spends millions and millions of dollars to create these checklists that are taken care of for our policies and procedures. And then my airplane is the Bombardier CRJ 700. Bombardier is the company, and they actually have to get their checklists approved by the Federal Aviation Administration, the government, our overseeing body, to make sure that these are as efficient and as quick as possible. When something happens, let's say we have an engine that fails, we need to know exactly what to do to overcome whatever's going on, or else the situation could get far, far worse.
Right.
I'll give you
Keep going.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. So when we were pushing from the gate, we were flying down to Florida, and I was told to start the engine from the captain. And I went over to push the button, and the systems are very automated nowadays, to where you just push the button and then all you have to do is introduce fuel at a certain amount, a certain percentage, and then the engine starts right up. So I pushed this button thinking that the normal procedure is going to happen. And of course, in the simulator, when you're in training, they throw a lot of things at you, but not everything happens right away. And then this is one of those times, because I had no idea that this was about to happen. Everything goes black. All of the screens go dark. All of our power is gone. And then even the passengers, all of the air, even though the door had already closed, is all dark. And immediately in my mind, we have a couple memory items, of course, but we just take a look and turn on our batteries real quick to see what the failure was. And then I pulled out the checklist for that, and we immediately alleviated the situation to where the passengers were more comfortable, and we were able to bring it back to the gate and have the airplane taken care of. But overall, that would be a scary thing if you didn't have a checklist to look at. But because we had something there in front of us for our guide, it was more of an annoyance. And that's what checklists end up being for us. They're really nice.
Right. And, I'm really glad you brought up not only that you guys have checklists for, routine everyday flight, but you also have checklists for when things don't go as planned. So that way it eliminates a lot of that extra thinking and a lot of that reaction time. So, when something's wrong, you go right to the checklist to kind of help alleviate any issues. And that's here. I'm going to show you this on my screen too. We just got this from an oral surgeon during one of our lectures, and it's basically a dental checklist for dental emergencies, everything from syncope, like somebody passing out, to seizures, to issues with local anesthesia. So it's essentially very similar to what you guys will go through during an emergency. I mean, we have this right here, and we kind of have a protocol to follow, which takes a lot of the kind of guessing game out of it.
That's awesome. And that actually looks in particular to what we call the emergency procedures checklist. That it's a 4-page document that has like all the worst things that could happen at mid-flight: engine failures, engine fires, loss of cabin pressure. It's right there, right next to my right leg, in this little pocket that we can immediately pull out. So we have 3 different types of checklists on the flight deck. We have the regular procedures, of course, and then we have that emergency procedures, and then we have the general procedures with different nuisance items and things of that nature. So something like that you just showed me on the screen, that's super important for you guys. And then that I feel how important that is on my end too. It's interesting how 2 completely different parts of the workforce can have one thing that could really help out in times of crisis and things of that nature, or just in general.
Right. And that's something I'm going to talk more about this after I let you go, because I'm not going to bore you with all the dental stuff.
But this isn't boring.
But no, I agree with you. And I think dentistry could really learn from aviation by having more of a general checklist as well. Like obviously the emergency stuff is super important, but I also think in terms of like just daily efficiency and making sure that you're not wasting your time and making sure that you're not wasting the patient's time as well. Having those checklists, whether you're doing like a filling or maybe a crown or something like that, that you have a checklist so you can get all of your materials ready to go. And you have all the steps in order that you can check off as you go along, so you don't forget anything super important that could lead to, that crown falling off, or, the filling chipping or something like that. So yeah, like you said, it's very interesting how one field can learn from a completely different field.
Yeah, it's really special how if you take this information and then you can bring it to another part of the industry, then you can make something so much better, so much easier, so much more efficient. So I think this is a good thing you can bring up, Brandon, especially from aviation over to dentistry. And then, of course, it's a very important part of my world too. If I ever have a cavity or something like that, it has to be properly filled. And because if it's not, I'm sure you could attest to this more, but the cabin pressure is different up there. So it might cause a lot of different pain and things like that. I know that when I got my wisdom teeth removed, I couldn't fly for 2 weeks just to make sure everything healed up. I wish I knew more about your industry so I could be have a little bit more of an intelligent opinion with that. But I just know that I just have to listen to that stuff. So I'm sure that that guy had some type of checklist that he followed or something like that when my wisdom teeth were being taken care of to move forward from there.
I could talk to you for hours if you want to learn everything that, you want to know about dentistry.
I would love to, actually.
Anyway, okay. Well, Dalton, I think we'll wrap it up here with you for now. But I wanted to say thank you so much. I think this is really helpful to kind of get a pilot's insight onto into the importance of procedures and checklists. What I'm going to talk about next is how we can apply that knowledge to dentistry to make dentistry even more efficient and more procedural and more predictable for both you and your staff and the patient. So, Dalton, thanks again for being on the show, man. And I'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, Brandon. It's always nice to have opportunity to talk with you and share my knowledge from the aviation industry moving forward. And for the viewers right now, or the listeners rather, as this is the podcast, I've known Brandon for a very long time, and he's very knowledgeable with everything that he's done so far. So I'm sure everything that he's been teaching you or everything that he'll be explaining to you moving forward once I'm done boring you guys is that he knows what's up, and then you guys are going to learn a lot from him. So once again, Brandon, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
You too.
Thank you again to Mr. Dalton Thompson for sharing a little bit about what life is like as a pilot and discussing how crucial checklists are to ensure a safe and predictable flight. So what I want to do now is talk about checklists in terms of dentistry and kind of apply some of the things that Dalton was talking about. So the first thing I want to discuss is the importance of checklists to you as the dental student or as the dentist, okay? And this is something I've been thinking a lot about because as I get closer to my D3 year, which will be this summer, I get closer and closer to seeing my first live patients. And I really want to make a checklist of my own for a couple reasons. First, to make sure that I have all of the instruments that I need for that day ready to go. The second is to make sure I'm prepared for the procedure I'm about to complete and make sure I know all the steps that I need to do and make sure I don't forget anything. And three, make sure my operatory is set up and organized the way I want it so I am as efficient as possible so I don't waste my time, or more importantly, I don't waste my patient's time. And here's the thing. When you treat patients at a dental school, there's a lot more hoops to jump through, if you will. Okay, you have to get all of your instruments from the dispensary from one area of the school, and then you have to run over to another part to pick up your patient, and then you have to bring them to another separate area where your operatory is. So there's a lot of running around, and especially like you're running back and forth between your clinical faculty too, making sure that they approve of your treatment plan and, you know, any concerns that you have about the patient. So there's a lot of running around. And if you keep forgetting instruments or forgetting vital steps in whatever procedure you're doing, that's going to set you back. And then you're going to have to run to another part of the school to get that composite that you forgot to pick up or whatever the case may be, or run to your clinical faculty to ask for help. That just, number one, makes your patient upset, and it's more time they have to sit there because you were unprepared, right? So it's just a great way to make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing as efficiently as possible. And you may think, as I'm sitting there in the operatory, isn't it going to take more time for me to constantly look at this checklist to make sure I'm doing everything correctly when I could just do it? And for the first couple patients, you're probably right. However, you're going to get quicker and quicker at running through your checklist. And you're going to be more accurate because you're still going through that checklist. You're going to be more efficient because you're not going to have to get up from your seat and go get anything additional or anything like that. So it's going to make your clinical efficiency. So much better. And it's also going to help you gain a reputation in the clinic with your clinical faculty. And I say this because as I've shadowed through some of the clinics and, been paired up with third-year students that are treating patients, I will see them seat their patient, okay, and talk with them, get their chief complaint and take their medical history and look at some radiographs. And then they go right to their clinical faculty to talk about a treatment plan. And the first question that they usually ask is, well, did you look in the mouth? And then sometimes a student, of course they didn't, is going to get all embarrassed and they're going to look ill-prepared for treating that patient because they didn't even look in the mouth. So just little things like this can really help you on multiple fronts. It can make sure that you are able to discuss your plans with your faculty and make sure that you're prepared to discuss that, as well as making sure that you're clinically efficient as well. Okay, so that is the gist of that. Additionally, if you have a checklist or an emergency checklist for that matter, that's going to really help you in dental school, I think, because dental schools typically have a reduced fee for a lower socioeconomic status population, which it's not true all the time, but that's kind of the general trend when you're treating patients in a dental school. And you're going to tend to see more medically compromised patients. So if something were to happen, maybe if a diabetic went hypoglycemic or someone experiences vasovagal syncope, or if there's some sort of reaction to local anesthetic, you already have a checklist there to help you deal with these things. And as I said before in the episode, I have a checklist. I was very lucky to get a checklist from a oral surgeon that gave us a lecture on cardiovascular problems that has all of the steps that you need to take in order to treat these dental emergencies. And I think that's going to take a lot of the reaction time out of it. You're going to be able to just react and follow that checklist rather than kind of looking around for somebody to help you and letting that patient suffer a little bit longer. So on the clinical side, yes, it's awesome. Also on the emergency side, it's going to really help you prepare for those types of situations. Now, hopefully you can see that the use of checklists for everyday procedures is helpful. And I really like what Dalton said, that a checklist can be beneficial, especially on the days where you are tired. Maybe you're just not mentally there, or you're not on your A game that day. But the fact that you're reading a checklist means that you've gotten yourself into a routine of keeping yourself in check and making sure you're doing things the right way. And I think that can apply 100% to dentistry, making sure that you're following things every single day, even on the days where you're not as sharp as you normally are. Okay, that's the first part. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I really think checklists are going to be super crucial in private practice. And I say that because I really have been listening a lot to Dr. Mark Costas on the Dentalpreneur podcast. And he is really big on the business side of dentistry. He's really big on systems and procedures and making sure that your staff knows exactly what to do and when to do it. And really, if you want a successful practice, you really want your practice to run like a well-oiled machine, right? So checklists for yourself clinically are important, but I think checklists for your staff are equally as important. Okay, you want to make sure you have a checklist for every aspect of your staff's day, whether that is, I have a composite this morning, please have the operatory set up in this way and please do X, Y, and Z. Or we don't have a lot of patients today, the phones aren't ringing. This is what I would like you to do instead of, daily hygiene or assisting me with procedures or whatever it is, just to make sure that your staff has something to do and is always doing something to help increase the efficiency of your practice. Because at the end of the day, really, efficiency equals productivity. Okay, I just wanted to throw that in there because I know down the road checklists are going to be super helpful, but I'm not at that point yet. I'm not running a private practice, but I really do believe that this is going to be a very important component of my future practice. So as I start to wrap up the show here, I want to challenge you to create a checklist of your own, whether that's for a specific procedure, like a composite restoration or a crown preparation, or if it's your entire workflow from beginning to end of a patient appointment. And this really doesn't matter if you're still in preclinical or if you're already seeing patients. Go ahead and try this. And if you do go ahead and make a checklist, I would love if you were to share it with me. I'm in the process right now of coming up with my own master checklist for every single procedure that I'm going to be doing in school. And I will be happy to release that once it's finished. But in the meantime, and if you come up with something, feel free to share that checklist with me. All right, I think that's going to be it for this show. If you have any questions or you would like to be a future guest, go ahead and email me at Bevert, BEVERT.dental@gmail.com. Or you can go ahead and message me on Instagram at BrandonEverett.DMD. And lastly, before we go, please come to Voices of Dentistry if you can. It really is going to be an amazing meeting. All of your favorite dental podcasters are going to be there. I will be there, and a host of other dental students are going to be there as well. So I hope to see you all there. Sign up if you can. And thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. If you really are enjoying the podcast, please go ahead and give it 5 stars on iTunes or rate it on whatever platform you are listening to this on. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.